I had talked about this book in one of my writing vlogs this week, and we just need to talk a lot about this book. So, Legends and Lattes by Travis, and I'm gonna mispronounce his last name, Baldree? I have no idea. Names aren't my strong suit. This book, though, I got it because of TikTok. Everyone was talking about this book. It's a cozy book. If you want, like, high fantasy, low stakes, this is the book for you. And I'm like, I didn't know that I wanted that, but like maybe, I don't know. And so eventually, I saw it enough times and I was like, fine. But I've been trying to utilize the library more, and now I've had the reverse problem that I go to like a bookstore and I'm like, I don't know. I haven't read you from the library yet. Do I want to spend money on you? I don't know. And so now I'm much more picky, but the library had a hold list for this book, and I was like, well, dang, all right. So I had to wait a little bit, and then I finally got it, and then I just casually started to read it, and oh my god, this book is so good. Spoiler alert, so good. So immediately within like the first 5 pages, I was invested in this story. And when there are just a few books that like you can't put down. Again, I have that with the Cinder series, or I guess it's the Lunar Chronicles, the Cinder books. Those ones. Those, I was like, oh my god, this renewed my love of reading. This book gives me hope for new books because this was so good. So I read it in like 2 days. I read it up until I had to go to sleep. And then immediately the next day I was like, yep, don't care, gotta finish this book. This is what I'm doing today. And then I finished it, and then I went to Barnes & Noble and I bought it because it was so good. Like the same day I finished it, dropped it off at the library, so the next, like whoever's gonna get it, that soul can appreciate the story. And then I had to get a copy for myself. So this is my copy I went out to buy because it's so good. So if you don't know, the premise of this story is very fun. So if you're not familiar with D&D, I will say this might be a little hard to get used to. There's a lot of like, you need to have some background knowledge a little bit on how D&D worlds work. Because a lot of the D&D, Dungeons and Dragons world, it's a lot of like kind of old school stuff and like fantasy world, but can also have elements of like modern life tossed in there just because it's just random. And also how the characters are and like some of the pretenses with them. You need to have a little bit of background knowledge on them. Not a whole lot. It's not really going to completely impede your existence, but just like a little bit. Like there's not a lot of like, I think the one dude was like a ratkin or something. And I didn't know what that was. And so I was like trying to figure that out. And there wasn't like a whole lot of descriptors. But if you knew what they were, like an orc, you're like, oh, I kind of have a vague idea what she's talking about, her bottom teeth, trying not to show them too much. Got you. Stuff like that. So with that in mind, having some baseline of an idea of what a D&D world would look like, you take your character, who's an orc, and probably like a fighter class kind of deal. She has a sword. She has a big sword. And she is on her last campaign, and she is going to retire because her back is starting to bother her. Her joints aren't as good as they used to be. She wants to retire and open a coffee shop. And like, it is the most wholesome story you have ever read. It is the best. Because like, I am so tired of the chosen one and high stakes. We gotta take over the government. We gotta save the world. No. She's retiring to open a coffee shop in this little town, and that's the whole story. That's it. That's all there is. There's a little bit of conflict here and there. Not huge. Not world-ending. And, you know, you'd think that wouldn't be a good thing, but it is. It's so good. Like, reading through this is not, like, this story, but the concept and how this is written and how the plot is exactly what I want to write myself. Like, this is the type of genre that I want to get into with my own writing, where we're not trying to save the world. We're trying to open a coffee shop. And, like, the characters are so much fun. Our main character, Viv, is just a hoot. And, like, there's not a whole lot of depth to this book, but that's okay. And, like, some people I saw in reviews complained that, like, there was no like high stakes, which is like, it says, and that the characters felt very flat sometimes, and like, I thought they were fine. I felt like for this, what this book was trying to do, it did exactly that, and I love it. If you play D&D, if you love D&D, and if you like fantasy worlds, you will love this. And if you want a cozy book, like somebody described it as D&D meets Animal Crossing, and that is exactly what it feels like. It's like the world of D&D, but the comfort and cozy and just like chilling, doing your day-to-day thing of Animal Crossing. Anyways, on to the spoiler section for Legends and Lattes. So I loved this book. This is like really truly fighting for my favorite book ever. And I don't say that lightly. This was such a fun book. I love the world building. I love how it's written. It was awesome. I love the conflict and how they deal with it. I love the conflict of this, where we just have this rich lady who just like kind of runs the town, and like she has her little minions doing her thing, and instead of paying the tax that everyone has to pay, they come to an agreement that she will get paid in pastries. And like, it's just the most like, and it feels so D&D like, where you're like, how you fix things doesn't always make sense, and I feel like it's so on point for like, you know what, I could just see this playing out at a game where the person who's playing this big scary orc is like, listen, can I roll to see if the person is going to take pastries as an option? And then they roll an nat 20 and you're like, yeah, they're gonna get paid in pastries. That's how that's gonna roll. Like, it's just, it fits so well, and I loved it. And I love that it was like her one guy that she was in the campaign with, because we all know that like not all players get along and not all characters get along, and that even though they had done campaigns together, he still was like a little bit of like a problem, and that he was the bad guy, and that like the big conflict of the book was that the place got burned down, but it was a good thing because then they could rebuild it with the space they need. And like how she built like the 2 bedrooms, which I thought was really sweet, and like the little romance there was like just enough, and you're like, it's so cute. Like, it's just so much fun. It's not overly much, and like just the whole story, it just felt like a warm blanket fresh out of the dryer. Like, it is the best thing ever, and it was so much fun. Like, I want the author to write more. I don't care about the action part though. That's the thing that I'm nervous about, because I've heard that he's going to write like the prequel of her adventures, and I'm like, that's not what I'm here for. I don't care. I'm here for the cozy after, where it's not big battles and we're fighting all of these huge monsters. I don't want that. That's not what I'm here for. Like, he's a good writer, don't get me wrong, but that's not the story that I'm into. I want to know what happens. What happens when the next retiring character goes on their grand adventure? And like, how they handled like coffee was so funny, because distinctly I had something like that initially planned in one of the many old drafts of my own book, where I was going to have my character bring in coffee, and specifically to have a pumpkin spice latte was like her drink, and she would have them make her a drink, and that was going to be like her thing, and we had to write a specific scene, and I was like, well, that scene would work really well. And nobody liked it. Nobody understood it at all. And I'm like, well, you have to have build up to it. And so I could only think of that like instance in my life where all of my class like critiqued hard, because my book felt like it was like a fantasy world, but then she's going to have like a latte. It's a fantasy world with lattes. Idiots. Like, I was so bummed. Everyone was like, well, it would just pull me out of the world completely, and was just like trashing this idea that you could incorporate, granted mine was a pumpkin spice latte, but a latte nonetheless, into a fantasy world. And then there's a book about lattes, and they, like, the way they handle it, where everyone's like really questioning it, and they're like, the bean water like filtered through a sock or whatever, and then like how they like slowly add stuff in. I know some people didn't like it. I thought it was cute. And like, you know what? Sometimes you can suspend your belief, go back to your childhood where everything just like made sense and you didn't question anything. It was adorable, where the student guy ends up doing the wards to protect it and to warn her against stuff, and the cat, I feel like that cat totally had a backstory, way more than we got into, and like, it was just so much fun. I love that the little rat guy is like the best baker ever, and I want to try his food. I want to try it. I know it's based off of some real world stuff, but I need to try it. I want to know. And like, I want to know what their lattes taste like. Like, it is just so much fun, and I want to hear what the bard's music actually sounds like. Like, it was just so much fun. Like, it was so nice not to have huge stakes and knowing it's not going to build into something huge and horrendous and oh my god. And like, how they deal with it. Like, it didn't feel slow to me. It just felt like you were just progressing as you normally would. This felt way more like a realistic sort of timeline than so many books. Because this felt like real life. And that was kind of nice. Because so often, we don't hear about the day in, day out of existing. And like, he didn't go through all the details, but it felt more natural. Where half the book is spent basically building the building and like getting started and slowly adding little things here and there as we go. And like, it was so wholesome, and it was like, it was the best thing ever. And like, again, it's just one of those books that it feels like a blanket fresh out of the dryer. And you're just wrapped up all toasty and warm and you're happy and it smells nice. Like, that is exactly what this book feels like. I will definitely reread it. I hope he writes more like this. I don't personally care where Viv came from. I don't care about her campaigns. I care about her now, where she has this like succubus of a co-worker that's kind of getting to be her girlfriend, which I thought was adorable. Like, they make such a cute pair, and I love how she's like, just because I was born this way, I don't want to be this way. Like, it was so cute. And like, the neighbor just like being a neighbor it was just the whole book. And Cal, and like, it was just adorable, and how she like never planned on marketing. Like, this whole book was just so much fun. I absolutely love it. And again, it's like the style I want more of. I don't want more books where it's high stakes and they're trying to have all these plot twists and all of these things. Like, you knew she was setting out to open a coffee shop. It was gonna work out in the end. I'm okay with knowing how it's gonna go. That eventually point A to point B is gonna happen. Like, it's so much fun. And it was such a good book. And I absolutely loved it. And like, just the little things in it. It was so, so good. So I don't know if there's other books like it out there, but this by far is one of, if not my favorite book ever. So obviously I highly recommend it. I went out and bought it because I was like, dude, this is like the best thing ever. It definitely earns the New York Times bestseller thingy that's printed across the beautiful cover. And it also had the bonus prequel stuff, which was like, whatever. Like, again, I don't care about her before world. I care about the now and the cozy of that. That's what I'm here for. So I don't know if I'll like the next book from him, but I really hope that like that genre of cozy stays. That's what I'm going to aim for with my next books. Not necessarily a D&D world one, but like that feeling is what I want in my next book. Not the one I'm currently writing, ironically, but the next one. That's what I want. Is that feeling for my readers, because it's like, I love that. And I feel like there's not as many books. And so anyways, moral of the story. I really loved Legends and Lattes. This is by far one of my absolute favorite books. I would love to hear your thoughts on this one in the comments down below. Make sure to like and subscribe. I post every single day, and until next time, thank you so much for watching. Also, remember to buy my books. I do have them linked below if you want to check out my first 2 books that I've written. I'm writing the 3rd one. I talk about that Monday through Friday, so make sure to follow along for that adventure. Hoping to have that published in June, theoretically, so keep an eye out for it. And until next time, I'll see y'all later.